Broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit, this is The Metro, a slice of news, culture, and conversation. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vinson. Today on the program, Americans on average generate 5 pounds of waste per day.
How can we consume less and become better stewards of the environment?
We'll learn what the city of Detroit is doing on this front and what it means to center sustainability in our food system.
And we dust off one Detroiter's collection of rare 20th century Black films and memorabilia that are on the way to the Redford Theater. But first, the pandemic was a lonely time for a lot of people. Social isolation became social distancing, and while there was a good reason for that, the separation caused a lot of problems associated with disconnection, loneliness, and apathy. Drew Freilich is trying to offer such meaning in his church. The co-lead pastor of the Renaissance Vineyard Church in Ferndale provides Alcoholics Anonymous, or AA, meetings before hosting a comedy event every other Friday.
That's right, Tia. And here is Freilich during a comedy routine a few years back at the Comedy Experiment in the UK, delivering some Motor City-inspired laughs all the way across the pond.
But I love Ford truck commercials because Ford truck marketing is like, they make you feel like you could be a car guy if you just bought an F-150, you know? They always show you like what you could be doing in your Ford truck. Like, you're towing a trailer full of concrete up the side of a mountain in your Ford truck. There's a wrecking ball falling off of a tall building into the bed of your Ford truck. They never show you like what you will be doing in your Ford truck. You're at the drive-thru at Burger King. Your kid just pooped his pants. Somehow it got all over his socks. I don't even know how that's possible. In your Ford truck. You're not even 5 miles from the house, and your kid's kicking the back of your seat going, Daddy, Daddy, give me a popsicle. I want a popsicle, Daddy. Get your own popsicle in your Ford truck.
Tomorrow, there will be another Joke Gym comedy event in the basement of Drew Freilich's church at 9 p.m. Here now to discuss the event and how he's building community with comedy in that basement of a church. We have Drew Freilich here. Drew, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me on. I'm just like blown away where you found that clip.
Did that take you back down memory lane?
How much digging did these people do?
I mean, we are journalists.
Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah. I haven't heard that clip in quite a while. So.
I was surprised. So that was in the UK.
Yeah, that must have been at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival back 2016.
Okay,
that was
it
while ago.
Huh. The date of the video was from 2 years ago or so, I thought.
Maybe Comedy Experiment. Oh, that must have been in Michigan. Yeah, maybe it was Edinburgh, Michigan.
Interesting.
Big
okay.
town up north.
Yes, mistake.
Easy to mistake the
yeah,
two.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so where did the idea of doing comedy in the basement of your church come from?
So I started doing comedy in Shanghai, China, at the Kung Fu Comedy Club. I was there for 11 years, and then we moved back to the U.S. in 2018, and we had just adopted our son, who's from China, and we were young parents. I still wanted to keep doing comedy. My wife and I both do comedy, and but we couldn't go out. You know, we're like young parents stuck at home, and so we built a small comedy club in the basement of our house in Farmington Hills. It was a rental. The landlord was thrilled, obviously, with what we had done. But then, you know, later we moved out. We moved to Detroit. We were planning to do the same thing in Detroit, and then the pandemic hit. And people didn't exactly want to be in tight spaces listening to people breathe all over them, you know. So there was a hiatus there. We became the pastors of the church in 2021, and it was actually my wife's idea. She said, look, why don't, you love doing this. It's a great thing. Why don't you put a space down in the basement of the church? There was a space down there where they used to do like kids plays, Noah's Ark, David and Goliath back in like the 60s and 70s. It's like an old building. And so we put the space down there, and it's just been this wild experiment for the last 2 years.
So the Basement Comedy Club in your house set the foundation for the Basement Comedy Club in the church. Could you first just describe to us what the club was like in your house?
Yeah, so it was a bungalow house, very small house in Farmington Hills. We would put my son up in the attic during the shows. Like, we'd put him to bed, and he'd fall asleep. So he had no idea that these amazing shows were going on down in the basement. He was 3 years old. And the club was just this small black box theater, kind of inspired by Edinburgh Fringe. Just a perfect little space, 25 people. We would do $10, all you can drink boxed wine from Costco. And it was a blast. It was like the coolest thing ever, you know?
Francia?
A little higher class.
It was Boda Box.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, we're fancy. Yeah.
When in doubt, pinky out.
Yeah, exactly.
So the comedy session that you hold at the church in the basement, that comes after an AA meeting, an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Talk about the connection between comedy and healing. What kinds of things can comedy offer someone who's trying to manage an addiction, who's in recovery?
Yeah. So just to clarify, so the meeting that happens before that is Celebrate Recovery. So we do have Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous at our church. Our church it's got like almost 10 meetings a week there. It's kind of the hub of recovery in Ferndale. And Celebrate Recovery is this 12-step program, Christian 12-step program. And we do that at 6:30. We have like a dry bar in the basement at 8 p.m. And then we have the shows at 9 p.m. Basically, you know, if you've been to a meeting or if you're kind of going through recovery, a lot of hard stuff will come up. Trauma, hurts from the past, things like that. A lot of stuff comes up. And so we find it's very helpful for people to, after you've just been doing the hard work of being in a group and being really vulnerable and authentic, to just go down and have a good laugh and just kind of laugh it out. You know, it's very helpful for everybody, I think.
Yeah, I imagine that would offer some really important release. I wonder if you think that comedy helps people open up then in ways that maybe they're not accustomed to doing if they're taking advantage of both on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think it opens people up. And comedy can kind of talk about difficult topics in a way that we normally, it's difficult. You know, it's difficult to talk about depression, suicide, substance abuse, stuff like that. And so humor can kind of grease the wheels a little bit on some of those conversations and interactions. And so it's kind of a great little combination. It's an odd combination. You wouldn't think, okay, 12-step and comedy, those don't go together, but they really do in ways that surprise me constantly. And it's been fun to watch it kind of develop.
It's bridging the human experience with both, I think, that you're talking about, with meetings that are focused on recovery, but then also comedy. Why do you think that the shows that you've held on Friday nights have become so successful? They often sell out. Is that right?
Yeah. So we moved it to Friday nights last year, and since then, basically since we combined it with recovery, it's just been popping off ever since we did that. And it's kind of a magic combination. It's a little bit of a mystery to me, but I'm figuring it out, but I'm not exactly sure what the magic ingredient is, but it seems amazing to watch.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. We're speaking with Drew Freilich, the co-lead pastor of the Renaissance Vineyard Church in Ferndale. It's hosting a comedy event in the basement of the church tomorrow at 9 p.m. So you and your wife both are comedians. You both are working in the church. You're both leading the church. Can you talk a little bit about, because you were just talking about it with Robin, this magic that you all have been able to create together, and this blend of relationships that you've been able to meld, especially in Ferndale. Can you talk about the importance of having this community space for these type of conversations?
Yeah, I think for a church, especially, it's important to have these kind of in-between spaces. It helps people know that, you know, the church, there's things we take very seriously. You know, the way of Jesus, generosity, justice and mercy for the marginalized, having an open mind, showing love to enemies, forgiveness, peacemaking. These are things we all take very seriously. but we're not taking ourselves too seriously. So the comedy club kind of helps to show that, and it's good for people to come in, and because a lot of churches, from my own experience, are not particularly welcoming environments. They may be toxic environments. It's good for us too to have this space where we can have this touch point with the community. People can come in and be like, okay, these people aren't completely crazy. They're only a little bit crazy. You know what I mean? And so it's really helpful for us too to just have something where, yeah, you can come out, just have a good time. There's no pressure. We're just having a good time, and we're kind of normal, just like everybody else.
Exactly.
And that's important for a church, especially nowadays. So.
And that's like the perfect segue, because it's one of our next questions. There is a lot of people are leaving the church. We see, especially young people, it's harder to get younger people in to the church. So why do you think the churches need, what do churches need to do in order to bring more folks in, of course, but in what way have you all found a way to bring in people?
Yeah, I mean, the church in America is, especially since the pandemic, it was already, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I use the comparison of Blockbuster Video. We're kind of running Blockbuster Video. It's in decline. That's not like my opinion. That's facts and data. So since the mid-2010s, the church in America is in decline. Since the pandemic, it's like it fell off a cliff. And so it's just kind of, a lot of churches have lost their way. They're getting away from what it's about, which are the things, I just listed. It's about loving other people. It's about making the world a better place. And we've gotten away from that.
And why do you think that happened? Like, why do you think there's a separation now with what church was or it should be or is actually versus what we're seeing today?
Truthfully, I think it's about power. I think people want power. And church is used to have power over other people. And it's been used like that for a long time. If you go through 2,000 years of church history, it's this constant cycle of the church abuses its power, it holds power over people, and then there's some sort of reformation, some sort of rebuild, as it were, and they go back to their roots and remember, we need to remember the poor, we need to remember to be peacemakers in the world, to be all about loving our enemies, to be bringing peace to our families, to our communities, and then it kind of grows again, and then it eventually loses its way again, and it's this endless cycle. So that's kind of where we're at, and I think that the church in America is it's in the middle of a really big renovation, as it were. A lot of things are going to have to be torn down, and that's a good thing, and there's going to be new expressions and new things that'll pop up that'll look new for a new generation, but it's exciting.
Yeah. And Drew, you've spoken about the importance of church as a space of community that we're talking about now, and that it can be more effective than one-on-one therapy, having that community. Talk about why you think that is. You talked about it a little bit earlier with Robin, but expand on that a little bit. Just being in community and having these conversations that seem therapeutic, it could be possibly clinical, but you have that communal space that eases it up a little bit. Yeah,
so I was a therapist for almost 10 years, and I was actually, during the pandemic, I was working at a therapy clinic. So the job that I just left was mental health counseling. And one of my frustrations with counseling, counseling is great, but it has its limitations as well. One of the difficulties with it is, I'd be having these conversations with clients, we're doing good work, but at the end of the session, there's no one else in the conversation. There's no larger group. And you can't just rely on one therapist, one person, 1 hour a week. Any healing that happens in the community, it has to be a communal thing. It can't be an individual thing. And then I think the church also, if done well, can give people the opportunity to also look outside of themselves, to say, look, it's not just about my own self-care, my own self-actualization. There is like a missional element to life where we are meant to serve others and to make this world a better place. And so if church is done well, it can fulfill that role as well. And so that's one of the reasons I became a pastor from being a therapist, is I thought, okay, maybe this will work a little better for me. So
I could literally talk to you so much more about the science of all that. But before we do let you go, you're getting a doctorate that's very much related to this discussion. It's in neuroscience of comedy and a theology of comedy. Are your studies changing the way you lead the church or the way you do comedy?
Wow, that is a great question. So the doctorate that I'm doing is in relational neuroscience and theology. And so I thought, is there any way that they're going to allow me to pick a dissertation topic where I can talk about comedy? There is actually quite a bit of neuroscience research published on comedy. It's kind of a new area. So they said, yeah, we'll allow it. Like, you could take a crack at it, and I've just started on that project. But I think that, yeah, there's areas that if you can get people to laugh, they can open up a bit more. You can talk about a little bit more difficult topics. You can get a little bit deeper. There is an element of building trust when you're doing comedy with a group of people. They need to trust you before they're going to laugh. I've done shows where I totally bombed, and it's because I just went straight into my jokes, didn't build any trust with the audience. They were like, we don't know you. We don't really like you. We're going to sit here in silence while you just die 1,000 deaths,
I always feel so bad when I see that happening to a comic.
Was that in Detroit? It wasn't in Detroit.
Oh, I've done it all over.
Many places.
I've bombed worldwide, yeah. Yeah.
Hey, but you kept trying, you kept going, and look at you.
Yeah.
You're doing things that are helping, working to help the community and Ferndale and the larger community outside of that. So truly, before we let you go, give us the rundown on the event tomorrow.
Yeah, so tomorrow night is our Joke Gym open mic. That's always very popular, and that's going to be a great event. We have a dry bar at 8 p.m., and then the show starts at 9. And then next month, we have a comedian in town from New York City, Gus Tate, and his album last year was nominated for a Grammy. He's very, very funny, and so he'll be at the Joke Gym February 21st on a Friday night. And you can go to our website, jokegymdetroit.com, go to the special events page, and you can buy tickets for that event. Yep.
Drew Freilich is the co-lead pastor of the Renaissance Vineyard Church in Ferndale. His church is hosting a comedy event in the basement of the church tomorrow night. Drew, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Yeah, thank you so much.
From the WDET newsroom, investigators believe no one survived the crash of a passenger jet and an Army helicopter near the nation's capital. Search teams have recovered almost 30 bodies from the Potomac River. Crews are trying to repair a broken sewer line in Macomb County. It spilled thousands of gallons of sewage into the middle branch of the Clinton River. Officials have issued health advisories in Macomb and Washington townships. Residents in those townships should refrain from doing laundry, showering, and washing dishes.
Coming up at 11, Americans generate a lot of waste, but that trash has to go somewhere. The effects of pollution on our climate, our planet, and our health are getting more apparent every day. So next hour, we're going to explore ways you can reduce waste in your life. We'll open up the phone lines to hear from you. What do you do to be less wasteful? The number is 313-577-1019.
Up next, the Old Miami is a place of lore. Its shadowy bar and sunny backyard have been the venue for no shortage of Detroit characters, day raves, nights you don't remember, and ones you do, like WDET comedy shows. We'll reflect on all of that as it turns 45.
This is the Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. Stay with us.